Hello and welcome back to BookPod. Today we are stepping into Season 1, Episode 6, as we enter Week 6 of our 12-week collective journey together. This week, we are breaking down Chapter 5 of The Artist's Way, which is beautifully titled, Recovering a Sense of Possibility. If last week's reading deprivation felt like a strict, isolating boundary, this week is about opening the windows wide and looking at the artificial limits we place on ourselves. Julia Cameron wants us to realize that the universe is an endless, opulent source of creative energy, but we often construct our own cages out of fear. Today, we are going to unpack how to break out of those cages and step into a much larger flow of creative abundance. We have a lot of deep ground to cover, from the psychological blocks of the virtue trap to the physical habits of self-sabotage. So let's take our time and dive deep into the text. Limits. We begin by confronting the concept of limits. When we think about changing our lives or expanding our art, the very first thing most of us do is list our limitations. We approach our creative lives with a mindset of severe lack and scarcity. We constantly tell ourselves, I can't do this because I don't have enough money. I don't have enough hours in the day. I'm too old. Or I don't have the right professional connections. We treat these limits as absolute, unchangeable facts. But what Julia Cameron wants us to realize is that we set up these rigid boundaries ourselves, using them as convenient excuses to stay safe and blocked. It is much easier to say, I can't afford it, than to actually face the terrifying vulnerability of trying and failing. Last week's reading deprivation tool was specifically designed to shatter this illusion. It showed us that when we stop focusing on external input and external lack, our internal world immediately expands. We start to see that the limits we think are holding us back are not external walls at all. They are internal, psychological cages built entirely out of our own fear. We have a deeply ingrained dependency on our limitations, and this week is about learning to let them go. Finding a river. Once we begin to drop those false limits, we can move into the next major concept of the chapter, which is finding a river. To help us shift our mindset away from scarcity, Julia introduces a beautiful, cosmic image of a flowing stream. She asks us to stop looking at our creativity as a small, fragile puddle in the backyard, something that we have to carefully ration, protect, and worry about drying up. Instead, she wants us to view creativity as an expansive, deep, flowing river. This river is tied directly to a larger, universal creative energy. Think of it like electricity. You don't need to invent the electrical grid to turn on a light bulb. You just have to plug into the wall. Creativity works the exact same way. The flow is already there, constantly moving through the universe. When you shift your mindset from there isn't enough to I am part of a continuous, infinite flow, your entire relationship with your art changes. You stop waiting for the perfect financial or logistical circumstances to line up. You stop begging for permission. Instead, you realize that the source is completely cooperative, and you start stepping directly into the stream of what is already available to you right now. You realize that the universe will actively conspire to help you if only you open the tap. The virtue trap. As we try to step into that universal flow, we almost always bump into one of the sneakiest, most destructive psychological blocks in creative recovery, which Julia calls the virtue trap. Ask yourself this very honest question. Are you a good person who is secretly miserable? The virtue trap happens when we live our lives entirely for other people. We become the perfect, dependable partner, the tireless worker, the selfless parent, or the endlessly reliable friend. We spend 100% of our energy doing what is responsible, respectable, and expected of us. We show up for everyone else's dreams while completely starving our inner artist. The danger of the virtue trap is that it provides a wonderful screen to hide behind. We get to feel spiritually superior. We tell ourselves we are being noble, selfless, and virtuous. But underneath that surface of niceness, we are actually burying a massive mountain of toxic resentment. We are furious because we are neglecting ourselves, but because we are trapped by our own desire to look good to others, we keep self-sabotaging. True integrity does not mean being a martyr. True integrity means honoring your creative needs, even if doing so looks a bit messy or selfish to the outside world. To help you figure out exactly how deeply you are stuck in this holding pattern, Chapter 5 provides a specific diagnostic tool, the Virtue Trap Quiz. This is designed to break through your denial. I want you to really listen to these questions and see how many of them resonate with you. 1. Do you feel like you never have enough time entirely for yourself? 2. Do you secretly resent how much you find yourself doing for others? 3. Do you feel like a martyr or a victim in your daily life? 4. Do you feel like you have to have a good reason before you can do something fun or spend money on yourself? 5. Do you worry that if you start doing what you actually want to do, people will think you are selfish or reckless? If you find yourself nodding along or answering yes to these points, it is a massive wake-up call. You aren't actually being virtuous. You are just trapped by the praise of others. You are using your busy schedule and your obligations as a shield to protect you from the risk of actual self-expression. Are you self-destructive? Recognizing that trap brings us to a harsh, uncomfortable, but completely necessary question. Are you self-destructive? When we start breaking out of the virtue trap, and the universe actually tries to hand us new opportunities, we often freak out. Staying blocked feels safer than taking a real creative risk, so we resort to self-destruction to force ourselves back into our cages. Julia outlines specific, subtle points on how this self-destruction manifests in our daily routines. It isn't always dramatic, like a massive meltdown. Usually, it's very quiet and insidious. First, we use procrastination on the projects that matter most to us, leaving them until the last minute so we have an excuse for why they aren't perfect. Second, we resort to emotional sabotage, like picking a completely useless argument with a loved one right before we are supposed to sit down and create, leaving us too drained to work. Third, we practice overcommitment, intentionally taking on extra work, volunteering for extra projects, or saying yes to social plans we hate, just so we can honestly look in the mirror and say, "See, I just don't have the time to follow my dreams." These are all highly effective self-protective mechanisms designed by our ego to keep us firmly planted in our comfort zones. Becoming aware of these exact points of self-sabotage is the first step to stopping them in their tracks. Forbidden joy. To actively combat this self-destruction and break out of the virtue trap, Chapter 5 introduces one of my absolute favorite concepts: forbidden joy. What are the things you secretly love but never allow yourself to experience because they seem like a total waste of time, money, or adult energy? When we block our creativity, we block our capacity for play. To unlock this, we use the forbidden joy exercise. Your task here is to sit down and write a list of 10 things you love doing but feel you are strictly forbidden from doing. These shouldn't be dangerous things. They should be small, innocent joys that your rigid, virtuous adult brain judges. Maybe it's buying a silly, cheap celebrity magazine, eating a specific childhood comfort food like sugary cereal, wearing a loud, bright color you think you can't pull off, or taking a midday nap on a Tuesday. The entire goal of this exercise is to intentionally break your own rigid rules. By indulging in a forbidden joy, you shake up your system and reintroduce a sense of play, rebellion, and defiance back into your life. Flowing directly from those forbidden joys, we move straight into the wish list exercise to uncover even deeper, hidden desires. This is a fast, completely unfiltered brain dump. Your task is to sit with a piece of paper and quickly complete the phrase, "I wish I could," 20 times in a row. The key to this exercise is pure speed. You must write as fast as you can so your logical, responsible brain doesn't have time to step in and edit you. Do not judge what you write down, no matter how childish or unrealistic it seems. Allow yourself to list absolutely everything, from "I wish I could learn to play the cello," or "I wish I could take a solo trip to the coast," to something as simple as "I wish I could buy a new pair of shoes," or "I wish I could have a dog." This exercise completely bypasses your internal critic and shows you exactly where your deepest desires are being suppressed. It lays your true map of future possibilities right out on the page for you to see. Once you have that wish list in front of you, it leads us directly into your core task for Chapter 5 this week. Look over your completed wish list and your forbidden joy list. Scan through the items, pick just one single thing, and actually go do it this week. It doesn't need to be expensive, and it doesn't need to be a massive, life-altering gesture. It just has to be an action taken entirely for you and it has to feel a little bit indulgent to your inner artist. If you wrote down that you wish you could watercolor, go buy a cheap 5 pounds paint set today. If you want a midday nap, schedule it. Do not just leave these ideas on paper, bring them into reality. Now, before we close out today's episode, it is time for our weekly check-in to look back and reflect on how the previous week actually went. Take a quiet moment to think about your experience with Week 5 and Chapter 4. Did you manage to complete your morning pages every single day? If you skipped a day, why? What were you avoiding? How did the reading deprivation challenge feel for you? For most people, a week without scrolling, reading, or constant digital intake brings up an intense amount of restlessness, or what Julia calls the jitters. If you felt angry, deeply bored, or anxious, please know that is completely normal. Notice if you had a sudden, unexpected burst of physical energy to mend things, cook, or organize your space. That was your creative energy trying to find an outlet. Also, think about your artist date. Did you manage to protect that time for yourself, or did you let someone else talk you out of it? Checking in with these raw feelings is essential, because the space you cleared during that silence last week is exactly what allowed us to open up to this week's theme of possibility. As you move into Week 6, remember that the universal river is ready to support your creativity, but you have to be willing to open the tap and step out of your own way. Escape the virtue trap, watch out for your own patterns of self-sabotage, and allow yourself a little bit of forbidden joy this week. Keep writing your morning pages, protect your artist date, and I will see you next week for Chapter 6.